15 units out of the gate. That's a hell of a run. Anything you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I'm almost upset that it's not more because the Georgia State kicker couldn't kick extra points last week.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd have gone over 61, landed on 60, and he missed 2 extra points. But not basically, I mean, those who have listened to me or followed me, the better part of the last 10 years, I've really altered the service toward college football totals, and that's where our main focus is right now. And just seeing things really clear. It happens for guys in the industry where you see things really clear. You get a good beat on teams and what they should be doing, and things have fallen into place. The big plays especially, very, very good so far, the 15 and 20 stars. So we look to keep that rolling.
Yeah, keep it going, man. I don't want to do anything to get you off what you're doing right, because 15 units out of the gate is awesome. So we got 313, 314 heading to the Sun Belt here. Looks like a 3:30 Eastern time kick with South Alabama heading to Statesboro, Georgia to take on Georgia Southern. Looks like the total of 54.5. And 13.5 is what Georgia Southern's laying at home. They had a hell of a win, Robbie, last week. Probably the biggest win they've had in years there at Georgia Southern, because they've been down. They beat Arkansas State, who's the prohibited favorite in the Sun Belt. Went down with Georgia Southern beating them. So you think that they can kind of come back here and cover this 2-touchdown spread against a where would you pin South Alabama at? Mediocre Sun Belt team?
I guess that's where you'd put them, Drew. I think when they're fully healthy, yes, I think they've gotten a little bit better quarterback play than what they expected after losing Dallas Davis to transfer, after losing Cole Garvin, the number 2, to injury, and then, being forced into playing a number 3. I think they're happy with that. But, it just seems that this team year in and year out is snake bit with injuries. And when you go up and down their injury report again, clustered problems at the defensive back position, through the defensive line. And I just, this number has gone down, and I don't know if this is a situational play or a situational fade against Georgia Southern, or if there is money out there that honestly believes that South Alabama can score on the Georgia State defense enough to be able to duck in under a number. Of course, a double-digit number. You don't have to score tremendously, but still, Georgia Southern has done nothing to discourage anybody who's bet on them so far this season. They've been very, very good. Returned back to that triple option out of the pistol that they ran under Willie Fritz, and it's really worked well. Shai Wertz at quarterback has been great. I think that, Georgia Southern, obviously, the real weakness on this South Alabama defense, Drew, is on the back end in the pass defense, and Georgia Southern does not take advantage of your pass defense with the offense that they run. They're so run heavy. But still, I just wonder if South Alabama's able to prevent Georgia Southern from running here, a team that runs for about 300 a game. And then Georgia Southern, obviously, out of that pistol. You still see Willie Fritz do it at Tulane. That particular unique style of triple option can get over the top of you pretty easily. So we'll see what happens here. I think I'd be against the line move a little bit. I just like what I've seen out of Georgia Southern and worry about the mounting injuries on the South Alabama defense.
Robbie, moving down the card, we got 315, 316 USF at UMass. Looks like USF minus 14, 70.5 the total. Robbie, anytime these South Florida schools go up north to play a game, you got to look at the temperature. I mean, it's not too late in the year, but still, do you know anything about the weather? And also, you think the Bulls can cover this 2-touchdown spread here?
Yeah, the weather here, I'm mid-Atlantic. I've got family in the Northeast. Obviously, I'm a Connecticut kid. So I keep tabs on what's going on up here. But the weather is, when people paint the picture of a northeast fall, a northeast autumn, that's what we have right now. And that's what we'll see over the weekend here. Rain seems to be going away here today, and you're going to probably get some mid-60s and real good fall football weather in that contest. So I don't think that South Florida is going to have to worry too much. It's not like when they went to UConn a couple of years ago and had to play in late November, and it was freezing cold. They got a bye week last week, Drew, and maybe needed it because they looked terrible offensively in that East Carolina game, and they didn't look any better the week before against Illinois as far as point production is concerned. They had a lot of yards in that game. It didn't amount to a lot of points, so it's too subpar performances by South Florida. And remember, the week before that, when they scored 49 against Georgia Tech, it was based on 2 kickoff return for touchdowns, and the kid who ran them both back subsequently got hurt and hasn't played since. So South Florida needed a week off to get their offense back. Nothing's a better elixir than playing the Massachusetts defense. That defense, again, has been just terrible this season. But the good news for them, Andrew Ford came back last week. And, even if you're not watching the game, Drew, because we can't watch every single game, if your eyes are just on the scoreboard, first quarter out of the gate, you see Massachusetts points all over the board, their opponents points all over the board. That Ohio U game was crazy. They score on anybody. And that passing attack it could be a different situation here this week because their head coach and play caller, and again, I've said this for, I don't know, it's got to be the better part of a decade since he was at Miami of Florida as the OC, that I think Mark Whipple is one of the best play callers in the country. He's suspended for this game. He made a post-game remark referring to the word rape about his defense, the way they were beat up last week, and subsequently it drew a suspension. So they're not going to have him on the sidelines here. He won't be calling plays. We'll see how it goes. I'm sure you just hand the play calling sheet to the next guy. But there's a certain formula to that. And I'd be interested to see how UMass reacts here. Their offensive talent is, off the charts in that passing game with Ford at quarterback. People still like the over. I wouldn't want to bet an under in a Massachusetts game. We'll see how it goes.
Right, we've got an ACC matchup here. Clemson at Wake Forest. Looks like the Tigers laying 18 on the highway, 62.5 the total.
Trevor Lawrence in, which is good for Clemson because last week they were probably trying to track down Kelly Bryant to get him on the field in the second half. But, they got through. They came from behind. The third-teamer did a good job directing the comeback for Clemson, so all's good in Clemson, South Carolina right now. The Wake Forest defense is so beat up and so bad that Clemson should have a nice offensive day here. But there's weaponry on that Wake Forest offense that's just crazy good. And we'll see. The key will be if Clemson can get to Wake Forest and get to that passing game before it even gets to start. Can they be disruptive in the backfield? I tell you the truth, Drew, Clemson's defense has not been exactly what I think we all thought it would be to start the year. Overwhelming and overwhelmingly dominant. Hasn't been the case. Wake Forest has a quick-hitting game that can, they scored their share of points against Notre Dame. Some of that was on the back end in the fourth quarter. I think Clemson can pretty much do whatever they want on the offensive side. Total up to 62.5. Not thrilled with either one of these numbers. Honestly, I think Clemson's going to win this game by a sizable margin. Just don't want to get involved laying 18 points.
Robbie, we've got 319, 320 ECU. That's East Carolina at Temple. Looks like Temple laying 10.5 at home, 53 the total now.
Yeah, Temple, pretty good turnaround after the first couple of games. But I kind of like what ECU's done this season. And Drew, Scotty Montgomery, after that first game, they had the postponement against an FCS opponent opening day, wound up playing that game on a Sunday, lose to North Carolina A&T 28-23. His job comes in jeopardy right away. But then they go out and blast UNC. They play very well against South Florida, and they go ahead and withstand a furious passing attack of Old Dominion last week and win that game. They're a little bit better than I thought they would be this year, ECU. Temple does have a real good pass defense, though, and I don't know that East Carolina has really been tested this year. I mean, you look at the 4 defenses they've played. North Carolina A&T, UNC with all the suspensions, South Florida, not a great defensive team, quicker than East Carolina, but not a great defensive team, and Old Dominion, a lousy defensive team. This is going to be the first time they're going to be face up with a real good D. For that reason, I kind of look toward the under here. It opened 55.5, went down to 53. I think the people that have played that have played it in the right direction. I don't know how much lower it'll go, but at this point in time, there's probably still a little bit of value here. East Carolina's defense somewhat surprising, and I think that Temple's defense will do a good job against ECU in that game.
Robbie, before we get to the next game, I wanted to ask you a quick question about betting baseball. You're up, 27 units on the season? That was your regular season final, correct?
That was, yep.
Man, doing run lines, I was watching you all year. It was very impressive. I mean, not only are you killing it in college football, you're killing it in baseball as well. And going into the playoffs here, what kind of changes are you going to make, just real quick, on betting playoff baseball compared to regular season baseball?
Yeah, I think in the playoffs, glad you brought that up, Drew, because actually my own habits do change in the playoffs, and I think I lean more towards totals in the playoffs, to tell you the truth. I'd have to go back over the records and whatnot, but I know that my line of thinking leans toward totals in playoff baseball a little bit more than the specific run lines. I won't get away from that, but I just think that the importance of the matchups as we go along, the matchups of ones, aces versus aces, when you get to this point of the season and these good of teams, totals sort of grab my attention a little bit more than actual run lines do. Underdog plays certainly straight up. We had one the other day with Milwaukee in that divisional title game against the Cubs, plus the price. So that'd probably be the major change here. We would look a little more towards the totals and probably toward underdogs plus price.
All right, 27 units on the MLB season, and guys, we just discounted the MLB playoff package, so it's I believe it's $99, and it will get you all the way through Game 7 of the World Series. And Rob Veno's the best choice at Sportsmemo, one of the best you'll find in the country. I mean, guys up 27 units. That's on a 1 and 2 unit scale. And in baseball, no matter what you hear out there, that's a heck of a season. Not many people doing that. But, Rob, back to college football here. 3-2-1, 3-2-2 in the MAC. We got some action. Northern Illinois, Ball State. Looks like Northern Illinois opened 4. Down to 2.5 at some shops now, with Bookmaker kind of leading the way here, under 3. Other shops are at 3. 53 the total. Do you agree with this move towards Ball State taking some money?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised, Drew. To tell you the truth, Power Ratings made this game NIU 5.5. Remember last week when they played Eastern Michigan, the money went towards Eastern Michigan and against Northern Illinois. I think that there's, a percentage of folks out there who have somewhat of a slight disrespect. I hate to use that word because it sounds like people don't like other people, but there is a certain money disrespect toward Northern Illinois right now. And to me, they've been the kingpin of that conference for a while now, and I still think that they're one of the best in that conference. And because they got off to a little bit of a sluggish start, I think you have to look at the opposition that they played. It could be, Drew, that if we look back to game 1 of the season for Northern Illinois, money came in steadily on the Huskies against Iowa in that game. That game opened 14.5, went all the way down to 10. Seemed like everybody was on Northern Illinois as a very trendy underdog play in week 1, and they get blown out 33-7. And after that, everybody's away from Northern Illinois. Nobody plays them anymore. Same thing here against Ball State. Last week, Ball State gets a big win over Kent State. We've talked at length about the return for Ball State of Riley Neal at quarterback and James Gilbert at running back, 2 guys that were hurt last year and really derailed their season. Those guys have come back to play good offensive football. They showed it last week against Kent State, but everybody shows it against Kent State's defense. I'm not sure that I would be looking toward Ball State here. I still think there's a class difference between these two teams. I think if you take the Notre Dame game, which maybe some will point to in Ball State's favor, saying, wow, they played Notre Dame really close, and look, Notre Dame's 6th in the country. Let's remember that Notre Dame looks like a real different team with Ian Book right now, and he didn't play in that Ball State game. So there's a number of reasons why I think Northern Illinois is the right side here, and I'm a little bit surprised at the line move.
When did Ian? So Book didn't play in the Ball State game. He came in the next game.
He started in the Wake Forest game.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when they benched Winbush and put Book in, and those are the last 2 games Notre Dame has played. And certainly, they look like a different offense because again they're allowed to. They're capable of doing more things, being more diverse and balanced on offense.
Absolutely. And Robbie, we'll keep moving down the card here. 3-2-3, 3-2-4. Syracuse, Pitt, 2 teams coming off of 2 losses here. Syracuse losing a close one to Clemson, hard-fought one, and Pittsburgh pretty much getting their doors blown off by by a really good UCF team. But either way, it looks like Q